today's conversation is part two of running effective discovery. And this episode will actually be discussing how we run discovery on our prospects and potential clients. Now, discovery sometimes has a very negative connotation, similar to the word qualification. However, discovery is more than just us deciding whether or not to move forward in a deal or qualifying. It's the attempt to genuinely put ourselves in the shoes of our potential partners. And I use the word partners because that's what we are when we are in the same startup trench together. We're fire team partners. Our arcs primarily comprise the tech side, and the founder or CEO ideally covers the rest. But that's not always the case. So we run this process of discovery in order to understand our partners to the greatest depth possible, seek out and address gaps not only in their tech side, but quite frequently in their marketing, sales, and fundraising approaches. But Shukri, I won't steal too much of your thunder because I wanted to ask you a few questions around how we, BitLab, run discovery because we're super transparent in our process because the initial call is very important. In our case, how do we typically run discovery calls? How is it structured?
At BitLab, as part of our discovery, we're vetting the founder, the idea, and the fit. And we start with the founder, and we're looking for heuristics of what makes a successful founder. So we're looking at the same things that a VC will be looking at in a founder, and a customer will be looking at in a founder. So a good founder is an excellent communicator because they must be able to communicate their vision clearly to their team, to their investors, to their customers, because that's what's going to get you the funding, that's what's going to get you the customers, that's what's going to get you the right partners. And so, assuming you as a founder have all of these things, the next thing we're looking at is the idea itself, is what is the concept, what is the startup, and we're also looking for clarity in that department because if you have a vague vision and you attempt to build the product based on that, you're going to build a vague product. You're going to build a product that doesn't resonate, that is not usable, that is essentially built for the wrong audience. And the result is you're not going to get product market fit. So we're vetting the founder, we're vetting the idea itself, then we go into the technical feasibility of the idea. Some ideas are, really, really hard to implement. Sometimes the technology is not there for certain things. But more often than not, the technology is there. But now we go into how complex the technology, how long would it take to build such a thing? And assuming all of these things, then we want to ensure alignment with our internal processes. And why is that important? Because this is how we ensure we deliver results to you. If it's a founder that doesn't believe in our process, we believe working with them is going to be extremely difficult. Or if they're trying to do something outside of what we normally do in our process, we usually will pass on these opportunities because we don't think we can deliver to you the best results.
If a founder or a serial entrepreneur approaches us with an idea and they don't have a product yet, what are some of the typical questions that we would ask?
First, we want to explore the idea itself. Like, what is it, and who is the target customer? That's the biggest thing. We're like, the more clear we identify the customer for that idea, or the niche for that idea, and the more clearly we identify the user. And sometimes the customer is not the user, right? The person who pays for the tool might not necessarily be the person using that tool, right? A CFO might be paying for an HR tool, but the HR team is using it, right? So in that case, we want an understanding of who's the customer and then who's the user, and then why you as a founder, like why are you the best in the world to bring that idea to market. And we're generally looking for experts in their domain, because sometimes I meet founders and they're like, oh, I build AI for HR. And then talking to the founder, it becomes obvious that they don't know anything about HR or AI. And then we're like, okay, so what's your edge? Like, how would you tackle this market that you don't know, you don't speak their language, you don't speak the niche language, and you have no expertise? So in that case, what we advise the founder to do is basically go and immerse yourself in that field or in that industry for at least 6 months before attempting to build anything.
And we've had a few of those conversations with founders that came to us with
Mm,
ideas, and I always find them to be the most interesting ones, um, because things are very fluid, and it's almost like they come to us to kind of brainstorm, um, which is good, but it very often, if in any kind of partnership, it results in a partnership 6 months, 12 months, 2 years down the line, because it takes time to build up that kind of expertise. And it's good that we're starting the conversation early, because obviously we can help them um, with picking their brain and giving them a few tips. But it obviously ends up being a very, very long process before we even start working together.
yeah.
What about a founder that might have a really good
Mhm.
idea but doesn't have funding,
So in that case, what we
and they don't have a
mhm.
product yet?
So in that case, we first look at the idea itself, and we have an investor network that we work with, that we've done work in their portfolios. And so what we'll do is first kind of look at, is there a fit between this idea, between this founder and our existing network of investors? And if that's the case, we're making introduction to those investors. We're seeing who kind of, like, is there interest, is there appetite, and then we kind of make introductions between the founder and our investor network. In some cases where maybe kind of the thesis of the investors in our network is not the same as kind of the founder's vision, then we have other partners who kind of specialize in fundraising, and in that case we might refer the partner to, or sorry, refer the founder to our fundraising partners, and they start to work on that. And while they're doing that, we're also kind of working jointly with the founder to help refine the deck, help refine the vision, so that by the time they go to the investors, they're really kind of ready. A lot of times, the founder might approach us and they have a really good idea, but it could be higher level or vague, or it's kind of the grand 10-year vision. And part of what we want to convey is also, okay, here's the 10-year, but here's what we're going to do in the next 12 months, or here's what we're going to do in the next 3 months. Here's kind of how we get you to market in the 90 days, because you have a very big vision, and if you want to try to take this to market, this is going to take you a year. And so we try to kind of figure out, what is the stripped down version, what's the MVP, the minimum viable product. And this is where the definition of a minimal viable product becomes important. It's that, what is the minimal, if we understand the customer, if we understand the niche that the founder is targeting, and we understand the idea, what we want to tease out initially is the critical assumptions. In every idea, there is critical assumptions that, if these assumptions are true, then your idea is going to be a hit. But if these assumptions are false, this idea is going to be a total failure. And we're not looking for right answers. We're looking to design experiments that can test those critical assumptions. And we're actually trying to prove them false. I'll give you a concrete example on this. Let's say, again, let's take the HR AI example. Let's say I'm trying to build a new HR platform with AI capabilities in it. And then, so if I kind of consider this idea, there's going to be a bunch of critical assumptions. That assumption number one, there is a pain point where really applying AI to HR will solve problems that were not solvable before. So we kind of put this and we say this is a critical assumption. The second critical assumption could be, oh, this product is something I'm going to sell at X price point. Or I believe this is a product that is best fit for mid-sized companies in the 5 to 50 million dollar range. These are all assumptions that if they're wrong, if you're, everything that you're building, if the market, if the product, if the marketing, if the sales kind of pitch, if all of these are targeting companies in the 5 to 50, well, we want to go and test that as fast as possible. And through that testing, we can either deny or we can prove the idea wrong or prove the thing false. And I think I did a horrible job explaining this. But essentially, with every startup, there is a bunch of critical assumptions around the niche itself, around the offer, around the pricing, and around the access channel that you're gonna reach those people on. And if any of these assumptions are false, you want to know this and you want to course correct. And the faster you can do this, the better, and the faster you can find the product market fit. And so, in the first month of engaging with the founder, we're helping them brainstorm and design these experiments to run such that by the time you go engage the investors, you didn't just tell, oh, I have a great vision, but we want to show the investors that you've taken tangible steps with the funding you have. And this could mean you have $0 in funding, but there's work you can do as a founder to prove to me as an investor or to prove to investors that you're willing and able, and you're resourceful. You're not just waiting on their money to do things. You're resourceful without their money, and you're able to go out to the market, have conversations, validate, and do the work.
When it comes to demonstrating tangible steps to investors, do any examples come to
Yes,
mind of some of those tangible
yes.
steps?
Tangible steps is I've surveyed 100 people. I've had 1,200 discussions with potential customers. I've had discussions with potential founders, partners. Um, I've maybe I implemented a click-through, maybe I implemented a prototype, maybe I used a no-code tool to do V0 of my product. These to me these all scream competence, scream resourcefulness, and as an investor, these are things I want to see in a founder, that they're able to do things on a shoestring budget, and they're not just waiting for the money. They always figure out things with whatever resources that they have.
Resourcefulness. And what is kind of required of these founders that approach us? What is required of them for us to push the idea to our network of investors? Is it a pitch deck? Um,
It's a pitch deck, and
are there
it's a
more
pitch deck.
materials?
It's really the biggest thing is we want a pitch deck, and we want a founder that has a clear vision and is able to communicate it effectively and tell a great story about what they're working to build.
And that's a rabbit hole within itself, how to attract and keep investors and what to even include in your pitch deck, which sounds like a episode or two to me. So I'm gonna save those questions for later. But
And maybe a very quick off the record, it's really why you, why now, and why this idea. Why are you the best founder to do this? Why is now the best or the perfect time to do this idea? Why not 10 years ago? Why not 10 years in the future? And then really, like the clarity of the vision.
no, that's awesome. That's really useful info. What about a founder that approaches us that already has a product and already has an internal team? What kind of questions would we ask during that discovery?
The first thing we want to identify is why are they approaching us in the first place? And these could be a few reasons. One is maybe the existing team that you have is not effective. Maybe the team you have is actually perfect and effective and humming along, and you just need to scale. So you kind of need additional or another like parallel team to help you scale. Sometimes you could have the right team, but you don't necessarily have a process around them. So you've kind of vetted and you've got great people, but then there's nobody emphasizing a process for them, or there's no process for that team to ship product. And so when we meet such founder, first of all, we're trying to understand their pain points. Like, why have they engaged us? Is it around the existing product and quality issues, performance issues, or it's really more of, oh yeah, no, everything is great, and I just need to take this to the next level. I need to scale it. Maybe I got to a point where I have revenue coming in, and now I feel I need to implement and enforce more discipline. And in those cases, it could be you're just looking for a CTO to kind of help guide your existing team, or it could be I'm looking for a CTO and additional people to augment my team, or I have a big initiative that my current team is focused on the core product and I don't have the right resources to execute on this huge initiative, and I need a parallel team. And these are kind of normally the three circumstances. Outside of that, it's really the project rescue where you might have engaged a team, you don't think they're on the right track, you don't think you even have a good quality product. Sometimes we might have to kind of go back to square one and kind of start over. And these are the most painful and sad stories to look at, but we managed to turn quite a few of those sad stories into really great happy endings.
That's a really good story. But when it comes to teams that have a product and the founder approaches us, let's say they work with an existing software development agency as opposed to having an internal team. How do we typically run our discovery process then?
The discovery process is still pretty much the same in terms of kind of the idea and the founder and all of these building blocks. um, the next step will usually be engaging the agency team and actually interviewing the developers. And and oftentimes this this is where we kind of find out the gaps. Sometimes the gap is really you have a really excellent agency, but there is no senior technical leadership. This is where we're like, okay, yeah, we understand where we fit in. So what in that case, it could be me or another CTO at BitLab who just steps in, and they become the party between the founder speaking the non-technical language and then the team speaking the technical language. And this is especially important if you're building a technically or technologically complex product. Uh, I think a founder dealing directly with an agency can go well in 50% of the cases where this product is straightforward, it's easy to understand, there is no technical challenge. Where things go wrong, if it's actually a complex product and now you need an architect or you need a very experienced senior technical person to do the translation between what the business needs are and how does that translate into features, into security, into compliance, into architecture, into different modules and how they talk to each other. And that's kind of where we come in. And sometimes we go in and we find that the agency is just crap. So a good story. This is one of the products we've done around IoT, where the founder approached us and he's like, "Hey, I have a lot of bugs with my product, and lots of things don't work. I've been screaming at the agency for months, and nothing seems to be ever fixed, or they fix one thing and 10 things break." And so we engaged the agency, and from the first or second conversation, it became clear you just have an entire technical team that is building a complex product, and all of them are juniors. And the crazy story, I while working with the CEO, I found like listings on forums from the developers of that agency, and I found a kind of it's one of the developers in the agency trying to get support around the problem they had around the product. And they're like, oh, I'm a new developer. I'm totally new to this. Here's what I'm trying to do. And can you please help? So we found this on a public forum, and it's problematic in a number of ways. Now, before we get there, there's nothing wrong with asking for help. Great attitude. But if I look at that forum post, he revealed a lot of things that I consider, you know, uh, trade secret or confidential things about the product that he just like leaked out on the World Wide Web. So I took that post, I screenshotted it, sent it to the founder, and I'm like, here's the this is the resources that you have. So this is the guy who you've been sold as a super duper experience. In his own words, saying, I'm junior and clueless. And by the way, like I'm not trying to attack these developers, because if you think about it, he's an employee in an agency trying to do his job. He's just extremely underqualified to do that job. And as a founder, I hope I'll never be in that situation. And it's very hard for me if I'm a non-technical founder. I don't know what to vet for. I don't know what to look for in terms of resources. I don't know what to look for in terms of skill sets. I don't know how to kind of vet experience. Or I don't know what I don't know. And this is why a founder that is building anything complex, and this could be like SaaS, right? I think SaaS is relatively complex. Marketplaces are relatively complex. IoT products are definitely complex. Health tech, fintech, medtech, these are kind of complex products. You don't want to wing these products because and you'll find the surprise, even if you winged it, and even if you got the product to kind of ship out of the door. Next, this product has to pass security checks, compliance checks by third parties, by government bodies, right? This is where the shit is going to hit the fan, and you'll quickly see the gaps, see the holes that you have in the product.
That's a crazy story though with the
Mm.
forums. Uh, like it almost makes me wonder, like how did you manage to even find the username or like anything attached to that?
This was, I think it was merely a, I don't, yeah, I think it was a coincidence, um, where one of my resource, I don't remember how I kind of stumbled upon it, but I remember I was kind of, what was I doing? Shit, I forgot. I honestly forgot. Yeah, I don't remember how I stumbled upon it, but it was like I wasn't necessarily digging or fishing for kind of signs of competence or incompetence. Um, yeah, yeah, I don't recall.
Gotcha. No, that's just funny. Because there are those moments where it's like one in a thousand chance of
Yeah,
that happening, and like fate has it that like you just happen to stumble upon it, and it turns into a really funny
yeah,
situation. Funny for us, not so
yeah. I
funny for
know
the
it's funny
founder,
for
but
us, and it's also funny because the agency, the CEO of that agency, kept insisting on call after call. Oh no, the people I have are great. Oh, the people I have are the best. And then and then I found this, and then I send it to the CEO, and then the CEO puts it in an email, copies me on it, and forwards it to the agency guy, and he's like,
mhm.
"Here's your senior guy in his own words saying I'm not senior and I'm clueless. What's your response to that?"
I forget what that's called, um, but it's like the anyone that owns a project or is responsible for something. Like they don't want to think that they've hired the wrong people to execute on the work. They want to take pride of the work. They don't want to say that, excuse me, they don't want to say that their baby's ugly, essentially. And so they're gonna naturally protect that. And it's a very careful balance from our end of after we complete an audit to say, either this agency is doing an excellent job or hey, like there's a bunch of things that could be improved. And it's very easy to take offense to that.
And I'll add that like a lot of times before we say let's go and replace the people you have, because again, if they've been there for a while, they've been there for 6 to 9 months. It's not an easy job. They know, even though they're incompetent, they know a lot of details about the project. So in a lot of cases, we try to work with kind of the agency developers, and we're looking, again, same thing. We're looking for, is this developer coachable? Because maybe the guy is a junior, but with the right direction, they can do things. So normally what we'll do, like, we try to avoid replacing people at all costs unless we can prove that they're incompetent. Then we're like, okay, no excuse, we have to replace them. But a lot of times we try to work with those developers, coach them, mentor them, put them on the right track, and then give them the chance to see if they're kind of course correcting. Are they really improving or not? And if they are, great. And I had a team that uh, it's a startup based in Canada. When we came in, we spent 3 months trying to coach the existing team. And they made progress, but the progress was extremely slow. So we went back to the CEO and we said, hey, look, the people you have on the ground, we think they're improving, but we don't think they're improving fast enough. Let's keep them and let's augment them with our resources. And I can tell you this, month one, when I brought in my resources, and when the founder saw the volume of work we shipped relative to his team of five, we brought two people. We had 5 people from existing team, and I only brought 2 of my seniors, and 2 were doing more than the work of 5. Then the founder, like, that's kind of at the end of that month, he's like, hold on. So you're telling me you brought 2 people that did the work of 5 on my existing team, and I'm like, I told you this already. It's just the difference between,
And they're completely new.
they're senior, they're completely new to the
They're new to the
project,
project.
but they managed to ship more work than the people who have been there for months. And then the founder said, okay, then full stop. Let's start to kind of ramp down the existing team and just ramp up your team. And we ramped up from 2 to 4, and essentially we tackled a 6-month backlog in about 3 months.
When you come into an organization to perform an audit, what does that audit look like? What kind of resources do you typically ask for in order to perform the audit that needs to
The
happen?
first, the first and the most important thing is the code base. So before I even have to talk to a team, I can look at the code and say, yep, yeah, this is. I can tell how much time, how much effort, and the competence of the existing team just by looking at the code. So the first thing we want to get our hands on is the code, and we look at. There's probably like 100 criteria that we look at in a code base. And essentially, part of our audit is we can run through this 100-point checklist to, to identify like how good or bad the existing code base is. And then we kind of, from that, we have an idea of, the people behind it. And then we go meet the people. So, and sometimes we find disconnects, but oftentimes what we see in the code and the people, it's pretty accurate. And to give you ideas what we look for in the code. So the first thing we look for is like best practices around, how do I put, I'll try to frame this in as non-technical terms as I can, but essentially when you look at code, we're looking at what's called error handling. Like, how do we handle database connection not working, or a call to a third party service not working? And in a junior team's code, there's no error handling. Everything is like, oh yeah, errors and crashes, and everything is not handled properly, is not logged somewhere. So we're looking for error handling. We're looking for logging, which is important when you uh, when you put, like, many times the agency is kind of focused on, oh, let's get this thing out of the door, but they're not focused on what happens once this thing goes live. How can I maintain it? How, if a user gets a problem, or if a user gets an error, how do I go back and resolve it? If somebody experiences a crash, how do I deal with it and fix it? because that's what makes a quality product. Is it's the ability you build it, right? Like when you build a product, you have a vague idea of how the users are going to use it, but until it's actually in the hands of users and they're putting it to the real world test, you don't know. And so what we want to do is kind of put the product to the outside world, put it to the test, and then quickly iterate and fix any issues, any UI UX hiccups, anything that makes the customer experience crappy. We want to fix quickly. And to do that, you need to have the necessary tools in place before you launch. If you launched and you kind of don't have those visibility tools or observability, what we call observability tools in place, you have no idea what the system is doing in production. You have no idea what the error rates are in production. So now this translates into bad product, which translates into bad experience, which translates to no product market fit, and translates to failure. And this is the failure that is avoidable. There's a lot of failures in startups that are not available, that are not avoidable, right? Like some things you have to find out when you go live. Which is, am I having product market fit? Am I having resonance? Is the product solving the problem? These are risks that are always going to be there, and some of them are hard to de-risk. But the tech is extremely simple to de-risk if you have the right people, if you have the right process, if you have the right technical competence. There is no reason for you not to de-risk your tech. Tech failure shouldn't happen. It's extremely, extremely rare for tech failures to happen if you have the right process and the right team. And so you want to de-risk your tech and then just take on the risk of the product and the market. But versus you have the product risk and the tech risk and the market risk, is just too much risk to take on.
And when you say de-risking the tech, is that through proper processes and systems and maintaining and logging of errors in code? And does that entirely fall on the coders to de-risk the tech? Or what does de-risking the
It
tech
is.
even mean?
It's essentially making sure you build the right product and making sure the product performs to spec, right? So if I built a tool for the, let's say I build a product that let's say I build another Twitter, right? Um, such product, like I don't want to be worried about that app crashing. If this app crashes for 90% of the users in production, nobody's going to use it, right? Or maybe I'm actually spending money driving traffic, doing all the right marketing, and they're coming and starting to use the product, but they're like, oh, they hit errors and they stop. And so now what do? They just like ditch the product. I'll never come back. Keep in mind that that's kind of you know how it's like the first 7 seconds of meeting a person are critical to form an opinion of the person. The same thing happens with the product. The first 7 seconds of meeting a product is when you have to create that first impression, and it better be damn good, because if I start to use a product and when in the first 7 seconds I face a glitch, can't log in, I log in but I can't do the action, now I'm like, this is a crappy product, I'm not going to use it again, I'm going to log off, and you'll never see me. And any money you spend, any effort you spend to bring me to use this, gone.
I can resonate with that 100% because trying to sell a software, I remember a very interesting call that I had, and I typically didn't have to do these types of onboarding calls as a sales rep, but I remember the clients, they already sold on the product. They were in the process of sending the purchase, and they wanted to stay on the call with me to register online. And it's a very simple process. It's creating an account and connecting that account to another account. And to connect the accounts, you just need to remember your login credentials. And they were getting so pissed off with me because they could not remember their password. Because of the way they set up the accounts, there's like two different
Mm.
usernames, two different emails, I think. And they were just getting super, super pissed off, like super aggressive. Um, and I really wasn't even saying anything. I was being relaxed about it. And maybe that's my fault. Maybe I should have been also granting them that emotion by replicating it and being angry with our
Mm.
product and maybe being apologetic. I don't know, but they were getting really pissed off, and especially when I wouldn't reciprocate it, they would be even
Mm.
more pissed off. Um, and that was their first experience with our product, and that probably is going to stay with them. That feeling that they experienced initially is going to stay with them for a while, even if our product is great.
I think if you're lucky, not necessarily. So Daniel I don't know if you know who Daniel Kahneman is. He's a great psychologist, PhD. I think he won a whole bunch of prizes, and he has a rule he calls the peak and rule. And essentially, what we remember about any experience, think about going to to an amusement park, having a relationship with a person, or having a relationship with a tech, with an app. People remember two things: remember the peak experience, and then how it ended. And so I think
Mm,
that first exposure, it matters because it forms the opinion 100%. But I think if they kind of gotten through that hurdle, it's, can you give them a really good peak and a really good end? And we, of course, if you're in SaaS, you don't want the end. So you just want to kind of keep giving them better and better and better experiences to keep them sticking around and using your product. And by the way, these are also the things that we spend a lot of time thinking about. Is a lot of time we spend is really dumbing down the product and dumbing down the experience. And I just want to set the record straight here. We're not talking about um, we're not necessarily talking about stripping out features, and sometimes we do. We want to strip out certain features to make the product easier. But I think Apple do a good job of only showing you what is necessary and keeping all of that power under the hood. Like a lot of times we you end up spending twice the effort on engineering something just to make the UI of it simple, but then you do put all of that complexity and all of that power under the hood. And these are technically are the best product, where it's seamless to interact with, but powerful in what it does. And how does it, to go back to your example, what we want is the smoothest, fastest, least number of clicks onboarding experience. And then again, as you use the product, let's say we have, like, in every product there's like a product loop, what we call a loop, the loop of me doing a certain action and getting the outcome I want, right? Like if you think about any app that you use, let's think, take an simple example, your alarm clock app on the phone. It's very simple. I'm gonna go in there, I'm gonna choose a time, I'm gonna turn this on, and when the time comes, it needs to play that tune, play that thing. So can I, and I always challenge myself, is, can it be done simpler? Can it be done with less clicks? Now imagine if that, like, all you needed from the product is to go in and set the alarm, and you have to do this in 20 steps, and you have to do this every day. Painful versus 3 steps, right? Uh, my favorite example on this, when we built one of the platforms we built in the medical industry. It's that it's the doctors, once we kind of show them, when we sat through a demo, they're like, wow, I can do this with just 3 clicks. And we're like, yep, yep, yep. And now they're like saying, wow, the amount of work that went to create that wow of 3 clicks to do that task, which is like, prescribing medications. It's extremely complex. Like if you think about all the things that goes into prescribing a medication, I need to know the start date of that medication. I need to know when you have the dosage, you have what's called the posology, and so you kind of have to set that, and then how many doses. So if you think about that experience, there's probably 20 fields you have to fill. And so we looked at that and we said, for this user, they don't need the 20 fields. For these users, they prescribe the same medication over and over and over again. So what do we do? How do we make it smooth? How do we make it seamless? And then we're like, easy. What if the system just remembers? Like maybe I'll fill that kind of 5 fields once, but what if the next time, as soon as I come in and type that medication, we bring you the most frequent medications that you've prescribed, and then you one click now, boom, fills the 20 fields. I don't have to fill the 20 fields or 10 fields or 5 fields. So things like that contribute to better products, because now, whatever took me 10 to 30 seconds to do, now it takes me 5. And so in the context of a doctor visit, to again tie it back to the platform we built, the doctor has 10 to 15 minutes to spend with the patient. If he's going to spend them clicking through screens, it's time of him interacting with the patient. And so when we worked on that, we're like, the success criteria is how many clicks the doctor has to do for him to conduct such a visit. And we worked tirelessly for 2 months just to shave off clicks and clicks and clicks. And we managed to, I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I think we kind of brought it down from 40 clicks or so. And again, keep in mind, it's like a full visit. We brought it down to, I think, total 20, which is like, we cut it in half.
And that accumulates in massive time. Let's say a doctor gets 10 visits a day. It's probably more, but and you cut it down from 10 minutes to 5 minutes,
Mhm.
spread that across all the doctors using your system. Like
You
that's
nailed the
massive.
math. It's on average, a doctor sees a patient every 15 minutes, right? And let's say they work 8 hours. That's 32 visits. 32 visits times 5 minutes saved. That's hours saved. And this is
That's two and a
and,
half
and
hours
this is
saved.
the thing that you need to think about every time you build an app. Again, medical platform is just an example, but think of this in every context, in every app that you use. What if you can, and I think you feel psychological pain. I'm pretty sure anyone who's listening to this right now, you guys can relate. The moment I try to use a product and it's laggy and glitchy, I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated. It's like dealing with a crappy person, right? Like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. I'll put my phone, I'll curse it, and like, here you go. And that's what we don't want, because now I've associated a negative feeling with that product, and now I have a love-hate relationship with that product. And the moment the opportunity comes to replace it, it's out of the door. I don't want to do it.
Bringing it back a bit into the whole auditing
Mm.
process and getting the code. At which point during our partner's journey with us do we ask for the code?
Normally, as soon as possible. So what we do is we want to have either an NDA or our services agreement in place. And essentially what this does is kind of just guarantees the founder work with confidentiality, that we're going to not leak it, we're not going to use it for any purpose other than us to conduct an assessment on that code base. And we usually get back to the founder with a quality report that describes all our findings, and it's usually something like overall assessment, excellent, good, medium, really, really bad. And then we go into kind of, okay, here's what we found on this dimension. So, security, here is what we found on the security dimension. Here is what we found on logging and best practices. Here's what we found on what we call code modularity. Is it like just
Mhm.
a giant one, think of it as one file with 10,000 lines, versus did I actually break it into multiple files or multiple modules that each functionality is separated into its own piece. And this is where we get into what we call spaghetti code. Spaghetti code is, I have a big file, 10,000 things going on there. I change one line and all hell breaks loose. Very bad. And this impacts long-term maintainability and what you can do with the product.